Oh, no. Make no mistake. He's still a Western leader at the end of the day. What are you talking about? 100%. That's how Western leadership looks at the situation. They all, because that is the honesty that remains in the process. So when Merz in Germany, the Chancellor of Germany, Merz, says Iran or Israel is doing our dirty work, that says what Israel is doing is insane, then yeah, I'm not going to spend quite a bit of time shitting on you. I thought you were done talking about him. I don't know. Someone just brought it up. It's for 1 second. Calm down,
For a second morning running, the southern Israeli city of Beersheba, struck by an Iranian ballistic missile. 5 people suffered minor injuries and were taken to the local hospital, itself damaged in yesterday's strike. Israel's missile defenses have shielded the country from much of the incoming from Iran, but they aren't impermeable.
For the record, some of you guys are not using this opportunity to have some serious conversations with your friends and family members and try to pull them away from the MAGA movement, not realizing that the tea leaves have changed, the tea leaves have shifted in your direction, and you're demanding perfect allegiances and not realizing that this is an opportunity to create a, albeit imperfect, but much stronger allegiance. You understand? This is an immediate contradiction. This is a promise that Trump made that is directly in opposition of what he's doing now. Okay? This is your moment. Instead of running around and trying to, for example, gatekeep how right you were or gatekeep activism, this is your opportunity to talk to liberals who are angry and resentful with the lack of motion from the Democratic Party. This is your opportunity to talk to Republicans. And there are so many of them all around that are looking at the situation and going, what are we doing this for Israel? What is this? What is going on? What the hell? I don't want to go to war with Iran. I don't give a shit about this. Mainstream media understands that this is a moment of instability, which is why they're unified. They're showing a unified front to consistently churn out propaganda that looks for a new permission structure and tries to design consent to the best of their ability to go to war with Iran. And some of you are not using this opportunity to speak to your fellow citizens who are absolutely like-minded and on your side on this issue. They don't have to be on your side on every issue. Just take the gains you can make. Start the conversation. Start the conversation. Organize. Be like, hey, isn't this strange? Don't be antagonistic. Be kind to one another. How do you call mainstream media a bunch of liars without sounding nutty? What do you mean? I think that's the popular position anyway. The idea that the media lies all the time is something that everyone has experienced at a certain point. At this point, there is an issue that everyone has seen that is directly at odds with broader public sentiment and what they have seen with their own 2 eyes versus what the media is covering. For the super progressive or for the empathetic, you can point to the Gaza coverage. You can point to Israel coverage. Immediately people go, oh, that's up. You can point to historic fuck-ups that weren't really fuck-ups, but historic moments where the media wanted the manufacturer consent to go to war with Iraq, for example. Everybody recognizes that. Even for some of the most, reactionary right, they already hate the media, so you don't have to do much more.
The military says it prevented a larger planned attack on Beersheba by targeting 3 Iranian ballistic missile launches and what it said was a military commander near a launch site.
We have many targets to strike. We have been preparing for the length of this operation. As we deepen our strikes, we allow ourselves to continue this operation for longer. We will continue to do that until we achieve all goals of the operation.
Tehran once again coming under fire overnight. Israel saying 60 warplanes dropped 120 bombs targeting missile production sites and one facility involved in Iran's nuclear program. Iran's foreign minister saying Tehran will not negotiate while under attack.
It is the Americans who are seeking negotiations. They have sent messages multiple times, including very serious ones. But we have explicitly told them that as long as the aggression and attacks continue, there is simply no room for talk of dialogue or diplomacy. We are in a legitimate state of self-defense.
He is, though, preparing to meet European foreign ministers who've gathered in Geneva today, while the French president is repeating calls for a negotiated end to the fighting.
One, nothing justifies strikes on energy infrastructure and civilian populations. Nothing. And two, we absolutely must prioritise a return to substantive negotiations that include the nuclear issue, moving towards zero enrichment, ballistics, and limiting Iranian activities and capabilities, and the financing of all the terrorist groups destabilising the region.
The crucial decision remains President Trump's, whether to join Israel in attacking Iran. In particular, whether to use America's so-called massive ordnance penetrator bombs on the subterranean nuclear site at Fordo.
I have a message directly from the president, and I quote, "Based on the fact that there's a substantial chance of negotiations that may or may not take place with Iran in the near future, I will make my decision."
You're such a good, sane example for your audience. My preconception about your stream was way wrong. Hell yeah, chatter. Well, thank you for being here.
Whether or not to go within the next 2 weeks.
But is that a firm deadline from a commander-in-chief contemplating the grave decision of committing America to a new war, or a go-to rhetorical device? In short, what exactly is a Donald Trump fortnight?
Since his first time in office, President Trump has often relied on a 2-week metric, promising big answers, tough solutions, new policies, and even decisions on some of those pressing issues.
You trust President Putin? You know, in about 2 weeks.
In your mind, is Ukraine doing enough to get this peace?
I'd rather tell you in about 2 weeks from now.
Do you still believe that Putin actually wants to end the war?
I can't tell you that, but I'll let you know in about 2 weeks. Over the next 2-3.
Macron is one of the only Western leaders who seems not to be completely out of touch. No, it's actually precisely because he is completely out of touch that he is presenting himself as a voice of reason when it comes to foreign policy. On the domestic front, he has completely lost support. So he's trying to do his very best to maintain relevance right now. And that's the reason why he's making these sorts of decisions. It's so you feel this way. He is spineless. He is not honest about his intentions. He's not going to turn around and like actually do something about Israel. There's no real motion there. The only reason why he's doing it is because he wants to. He recognizes the momentum that the major opposition party, France Unbowed, has. They have been a resilient voice in this process against Israel, and his public sentiment has shifted in their favor. Macron recognizes that, and considering that like foreign policy is the only place where he has any control left, because he has no control on the domestic front, he is trying to do his very best to be like, I'm a foreign policy guy, and he is trying to hold on to some semblance of popularity by saying the right things, even though it's too little, too late.
3 weeks. In about 2 weeks. Within 2 weeks. In 2 weeks. In 2 weeks. You'll be hearing about it a lot more in the next 2 weeks. Maybe in 100 years from now. Maybe in 2 weeks.
Iran state TV this morning releasing new images of ballistic missile.
What is in touch about him wanting to limit Iran's ballistic capabilities, funding militias in the region, as well as stopping them getting nukes? Oh, no. Make no mistake. He's still a Western leader at the end of the day. What are you talking about? 100%. That's how Western leadership looks at the situation. They all, because that is the honesty that remains in the process. So when Merz in Germany, the Chancellor of Germany, Merz, says Iran or Israel is doing our dirty work, that is a significantly more honest approach to the subject matter. It's an unpopular approach to the subject matter, but it's one that has a brutal honesty to it in the way that Western foreign policy works. That's why I said Macron is being dishonest and he's spineless. Do you see what I'm saying? It's just asking Iran to be sitting ducks like how the Lebanese government and the army is. Yes. These are, first of all, Iran is perhaps too sovereign for its own good, okay? Iran has often remained very restrained, while also simultaneously refusing to work with other larger superpowers. And it's kind of an issue for them right now. But having said that, it's also part of the reason why they are kind of sitting ducks a little bit right now. I don't know where it will go, except Russia, but like even barely, and barely with China too. I feel like Iran has better ties with the Democratic People's Republic of Korea than they do with China. Like more resilient ties with North Korea than they do with China.
Launches. One consideration for Trump, possible strikes on US troops in the region. Another one, increasingly public divisions within his own political base, promised an end to military interventions far from home. In Israel, despite the damage and death being dealt by Iranian strikes, there is still overwhelming public support for military action. And if the Prime Minister is disappointed by Trump's 2-week delay, he's not showing it, telling an interviewer last night it's up to the US President to do what's in the interests of his country, while he acts in Israel's interests.
Our primary objective is to stop the nuclear program and remove it as a threat. The second goal is to halt the advancement of ballistic capabilities, also to remove it as a threat. In the process, it's clear the regime is destabilizing.
I will say one other thing. If I am a part of the leadership structure of any of these Sunni Arab countries right now, I'm looking at what Iran is doing, and I'm looking at all the favors that they're winning over from my population, and I'm really, really reconsidering the ways in which I've dealt with the Israel question so far. Because let me tell you something. It's not going to be a wave of support for Shia Islam in these countries, but toothpaste is out of the tube at this point. Okay? Toothpaste is out of its tube. Anyone that strikes back at Israel wins tremendous favor in the region and stands to gain overwhelming popularity. Lol, what are you talking about? They live for Israel? I know. The leadership does, but the population doesn't. And you can't even beef up enough like sectarian infighting against Shias. And if you can't do that, then people are going to start asking questions about why Shia leadership has shown more courage to stand up for the Palestinians than you have. All of these supposed Sunni leaders in the region that act as though they are brave defenders of the Ummah have been awfully quiet and have defended Israel unconditionally, as a matter of fact. Kind of weird.
We're also hitting government-related targets and centres of power. You've seen this with the broadcast centre, and there's more to come. But the matter of regime change is, first and foremost, up to the Iranians.
Never seen so many Arabs supporting Iran. It was something near impossible to imagine a few years back. Saudi-funded Muslim World League chief tells Britons to avoid talking about Gaza to integrate. Animals. Oh, yeah.
People.
In the context of this first week of war, the last 24 hours have been relatively quiet. Tehran's streets this morning, markedly so. But Israel is talking of more targets, deeper strikes. Iran promising to fight back, not negotiate under fire. Few illusions then that this is yet close to coming to an end. Well, joining me now is Sir Richard Dalton, a former UK ambassador to Tehran. Sir Richard, thank you very much for joining us.
What do I say to my Sunni relatives that keep bringing up shit that Iran has done in Syria and such when I bring up Iran in a positive light? I don't know. Look at the current Sunni leadership in Syria and how much they are playing a role in defending Israel's interests, allowing Israel to fly over the Sunni controlled Shia airspace, what little role they've played so far when Israel came in and destroyed all of their anti-air defenses and their remaining air force and all their weapons stockpiles. They have no sovereignty. They have become a complete puppet state, as I said was going to happen.
We have the Iranian foreign minister heading to Geneva today to talk to his European counterparts. Where do you put the current Iranian position?
I think that there is scope to go back to what Witkoff and Aragche in their previous discussions had initialed.
Assad was definitely more of an Israel puppet than Jelani. Brother, Assad was weak. He was despotic. He was brutal. He was ruthless. And yes, he certainly played a role in Israel's espionage, by my assessment at least, Israel's espionage in the region. Okay? I think it's not an accident that Mossad was able to deeply penetrate the IRGC in the ways that they did. But if you think that Jolani is not an even bigger puppet, you are delusional. What the are you talking about? What the are you talking about, dude? Coping in spectacular fashion. Not saying Jelani is great, but it's very early. Yeah, the amount of copium coming out of you is hilarious. Yeah, when Assad fell, Israel destroyed all of Syria's air defenses and Jelani did nothing. I wonder why. And you would say, oh, what could he have done? Sure. They dismantled any remaining Palestinian leadership or Palestinian militancy in the country. They demanded that they put down their arms and get the out of Syria. Assad was selfish and weak and therefore played ball with Israel, certainly. Okay? He did. Partially the reason why he also played ball with Iran. But under Assad's leadership, Syria was a logistical hub for Iran to send weapons into Hezbollah, to Lebanon. That doesn't exist anymore. Syria has no defenses either. Its entire governance structure is now led by coalition forces that were trained by NATO or former Al-Qaeda militants like Jolani himself. Like, they have nothing. Syria currently has no sovereignty. Turkey and Israel are basically experiencing a little bit of conflict on what pieces of the Syrian territory is going to be under their rulership. And you guys are talking about how Jolani is actually, more anti-Israel than Assad is. Come on.
Namely, for Iran to revert to the very highest levels of transparency ever imposed on any member of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. Second, to remove through export or dilution all the controversial stocks of uranium enriched to 60% and to commit either to a suspension of all enrichment while negotiations on a long-term agreement continue. So I think it's possible to see the war ending with a first stage agreement that builds on those elements. And we have to see how rigid Israel and the United States are likely to be.
And into that calculation comes this.
Your country is literally supplying the weapons for the genocide and you're blaming the devastated countries of weapons made in the U.S. Get a grip. They have no choice but diplomacy. I'm not only just shitting on America in this involvement, I'm also shitting on Turkey for what role Turkey also played in Syria. You understand that, right? I'm not the one who is defending the actions. I'm not the one who's defending the actions of a puppet regime that was designed to be this way and offering talking points for why they are the way that they are. Having said that, of course, I wish the Syrian population an act of sovereignty, hopefully, one day.
This idea of a 2-week delay that Donald Trump has imposed on the whole process, saying that he wants that length of time to decide whether or not to use US military force. Where does that leave Iran? Where does that leave the process, in your view?
Well, one should mention first the significant doubts in military circles that in the United States that even their weaponry is able to destroy the Fordo plant. This is the one that's buried under scores of meters of rock and which is a serious worry for those who think that Iran might one day take a decision to develop a nuclear weapon. So maybe President Trump has realized what the rest of us knew, that a diplomatic agreement in which Iran willingly reverts to measures which give the world an assurance that it will never have a nuclear weapon and that there is a negligible risk of diversion of nuclear materials to military purposes, maybe he is moving in that direction. If so, we could be optimistic. If not, and he's insisting on absolutely no nuclear enrichment for civil purposes inside Iran, we may have a problem. We don't know how inflexible the supreme leader of Iran will be. There is a point beyond which it is politically untenable in Iran for him to concede.
As far as the Israelis are concerned, there is this.
I don't think Hasan knows how much Assad oppresses his own people. No, I do. I'm not a fan of Assad at all. I'm simply stating that the Syrian quote unquote revolution that took place is not really, no one even really calls it a revolution, is not a real popular revolution. It was propped up and backed by Western interests to serve the exact purpose of the current Syrian puppet state is serving. That's it.
Talk from a number of military analysts, former generals and intelligence officials saying, look...
It's ironic to talk about Syria this way, for the record, because, like, the Syrian plan is what America would love to do in Iran. You understand? Like, what Western governments want to do in Iran is basically either some version of Libya or some version of Syria. Both are horrible for the Iranian population. Do you see what I mean?
Nothing could be worse regime in Iran. So whatever happens, if it were to be collapsed, would be a good thing. As someone who served, I believe, in the region at the height of the aftermath of the Iraq invasion, there will be people worried that what comes after the current Iranian regime could be potentially considerably worse, or at least extremely destabilizing for the region.
Our experience in Iraq and Afghanistan shows that wars don't solve internal problems. You have to...
Same thing as Iraq, right? I mean, yeah, but Iraq is different because, like, it was a full-blown military campaign, boots on the ground military warfare. So it's all the same. It works in the same exact way. Having said that, however, there are limitations, okay? There are limitations to what you can get away with. And that's why I said it's partially Libya, partially Syria. With Syria, you had deep civil unrest, incredibly weak and incredibly violent leadership that America could take advantage of, okay? Propping up different armed factions, offering logistics, offering training to different armed factions, Kurds on the one side, NATO-backed Turkish forces on the other side, ISIS at certain points as well, and ISIS-backed or ISIS-adjacent Salafist militancy like HTS, former Al-Qaeda, right? You can't really do that in Iran because it's a competent nation state that is still repressive, and that repression is a national security flaw for Iran, as we have seen in the Mossad operations that took place in Iran. But it's not like they don't have the same smoke and they don't have the same capabilities as they did in Syria, because the Syrian civil war was long, convoluted. It was extended conflict that gave the opportunity to create these militancies. Assad's violence also created a real, and this is correct, it was actually a popular uprising in 2011 in Syria. Maybe it got co-opted when violence broke out, because the regime decided to respond with violence. But the idea that the Arab Spring was somehow CIA is such a blind spot that many on the left and the West have, no, that's not my assessment at all. A lot of the color revolutions and a lot of the Arab Spring revolutions started off, as it usually does, with real popular resentment, real popular mobilization. It just very quickly gets co-opted by Western interests. That is my point. That is, I'm basically describing that to you right now. Two things can be true at the same time, and in this circumstance, it is. Now, as far as I have seen, all the analysis that I've read, it doesn't seem like there is enough bandwidth to be able to do that in Iran. While the repressive and sometimes violent forces in Iran, it doesn't seem to have reached the standard of Assad. It is a more competent form of governance, albeit still repressive, still very violent, but significantly more competent. And you see that with the foreign policy decisions that the Ayatollah makes. You see that with the domestic politics on allowing like different pressure valves for Iranian society after tremendous struggle from real popular uprisings in Iran. And there's still a much, this is a much longer battle, okay? Having said that, it would perhaps resemble Libya more for that reason, because it can't look like Iraq, because you cannot do boots on the ground military warfare. Like, you cannot do the American forces with its endless might and its endless support is completely incapable of doing boots on the ground military warfare in a nation state like Iran with 92 million people that is basically a mountainous territory that is like a castle, like a natural castle. It is very, very difficult. So they can't do the Iraq version, okay? They can't do the Iraq version of destabilization. It seems like they are trying but failing to do the Syrian style of destabilization, especially because Israel's bombing campaigns, I think, destroyed any opportunity to do a Syrian style foment, really push the public popular resentment towards the Iranian government to an untenable situation, force the government to respond in incredibly violent ways, as they have in the past. The Iranian government has done this already, stamping out dissent and being endlessly repressive and endlessly violent. But they can't do the Syrian style. So the only opportunity that remains is the Libya style intervention, where you do bombing campaigns with NATO forces, as they did in Libya, and hope that like some armed militancy will end up killing the head of state. And I would say, as far as all of these countries, if we are looking at atrocities in the aftermath of Western intervention, Libya is the worst possible outcome. And I think a lot of Iranians, given their history, given their background, given their understanding of what comes after Western intervention, are terrified of that prospect. They're not stupid. They're a very well-read population. They're a very educated population. The average Middle Eastern uncle has more knowledge of American foreign policy than American State Department think tanks have. Okay? They're forced into learning everything that's going on. The Persian unks and aunties, they see everything that has taken place in the region. They understand what Western intervention looks like. There might be, okay, delay's gone. Great. The Piker Broadcasting Service is brought to you by Endless Delays. If you want to stop the delays, please subscribe. The way we test out the delays of the Piker Broadcasting Service is by subscribing. You can show your support and subscribe and show whether or not there is an endless delay on the broadcast by offering a $6 a month subscription, offering gifted subs to other people who can also use the cool badges and the opportunity to be able to send me links, some of which I will not actually click on. Or you can subscribe for free with a Twitch Prime by connecting your Amazon Prime account to your Twitch account. The Piker Broadcasting Service is brought to you by the viewers for viewers like you. Thank you. You constantly prefacing Iran and how violent and oppressive it is contributes to manufacturing consent for all this. Iran is way less violent than, say, the US or Germany. But why don't you preface talking about them in that way? No, that's something that I also factor into this conversation all the time. Iran is far, far more restrained in its foreign policy, far less violent, even in its foreign policy in matters of intervention than Israel ever would be, than America ever could be. This is not even a matter of debate. This is just the absolute truth. It is the exact same thing that I say about Hamas as well. It's not even a question. Not even a question. I am not manufacturing consent for regime change in Iran. Make no mistake. I would love for Iran to be a democratic, secular, socialist state. That would be fantastic. That would be the best. That wouldn't change America's opinion on Iran. That wouldn't change America's calculation on Iran. Not even a little bit. But that is up to the Iranian people. And the Iranian people are not going to do that on their own, especially when they're being bombed by the United States of America and Israel. There's a reason why I consistently bring up social repression in places like Saudi Arabia, as a matter of fact. Saudi Arabia is just as, if not more, fundamentalist than Iran is, and yet nobody ever makes a peep about that. I wonder why. Perhaps it's because they are aligned with Israel and America's interests in the region. I don't think there's any reason to lie about social forces in Iran. I think it's important to recognize social repression that is an ever-present problem for Iranian society, especially because it quite literally factors in to the calculation when speaking on national security interests from the Iranian perspective. You understand? The social repression of the government plays a role in the calculation of the public.
And the Congo will be doing a peace settlement, probably coming in on Monday or Tuesday. We're going to be signing it up, and we've stopped a very vicious war. So that was an honor for me to be involved. I want to thank J.D. Vance for a great job, and also our Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, has done a fantastic job. So Rwanda, long-term war with the Congo, a very bloody war. They're all bloody, but this was a really bloody one.
They were democratic secular initially in 1979 when the revolution occurred. Wait, what? Then the U.S. used Iraq to invade, which bolstered the Ayatollahs. Oh, you're saying in its initial implementation, they were in the initial revolution. I thought you were trying to say when the Shah was in power. I was like, that's crazy. No. He was saying when the Iranian revolution happened, it was not simply a revolution backed by like Islamist fundamentalist forces. It was a proletarian revolution, which is true. You are right. This chatter is 100% correct. Then the U.S. used Iraq to invade, which bolstered the Ayatollahs. Also, the social repression is overblown for much of the Shia population. Let's be for real. That chatter is correct. The Iranian Revolution did not happen simply with Islamist fundamentalist forces. That's wrong. That's not correct. It was a coalition. Of course, yes, the division in the aftermath of the war, gave righteous cause to the Ayatollah to stamp out and destroy any sort of secular socialist forces that contributed to the Iranian Revolution. Part of that was because, and this is the age-old equation for Western forces, they would rather have Islamist fundamentalists in power, thinking that they are a less dangerous force than one that could align, a socialist force that could align with the USSR, God forbid.
He's going to be making peace with Congo, and they can get on to.
They're also easily positioned as like anti-West because they are. And what makes these countries popular, or what makes this leadership popular, is being anti-West. And the easiest way to show that you are an incorruptible anti-West force that will maintain sovereignty for your respective countries is by beefing up the Islam side of things. That is unironically how Hamas rose to power as well in the democratic elections that were put together by the American government. After decades of the so-called peace process failing to give sovereignty to the Palestinians, and all of the forces that were supposedly in charge of this so-called peace process being seen as collaborators with the West, because they were, and collaborators with Israel because they were, the Palestinian population was looking for an alternative, an uncorruptible force that was willing to engage in acts of militancy. Hamas was running on an anti-corruption ticket. That's how they won the elections initially. And then what did the American forces do? They put up a coup, which failed, which then further emboldened Hamas and caused them to take complete control over the Gaza Strip. This was, in my opinion, also a failed calculation on the Israeli part, the assumption that Hamas was barbaric, Islamist, and would be much easier to deal with from the perspective of the West, scary Muslim guys are inherently antagonistic to the West, are much easier to gain support when you're destroying them. Like you can win favors in the West by saying, well, these are scary Muslim terrorist guys over and over again, as opposed to a guy like a guy that's like a secular Christian Palestinian who can be convincing and charismatic. The problem with Israel's miscalculation with Hamas, however, is that Hamas was more open towards gaining secular support than they thought Hamas would be. That is a major issue. Hamas is invested primarily in the emancipation of Palestinians. They're not invested in like doing some sort of like Salafist jihad or anything like that. They're not. Their only goal, their sole singular goal is to engage in acts of militancy that work towards the emancipation of Palestinians. And in that process, they have time and time again defended West Bank Palestinians through acts of militancy, while also simultaneously making demands that would be that would go against their supposed interest of constantly maintaining dominance over the Palestinian population, is the way that Israeli envoys claim that they're doing. That they're like these corrupt, that there are these corrupt people that want to dominate the lives of Palestinians and make money in the process or whatever. If that was the case, they would not be actively demanding through their militancy the release of popular figures that are significantly more popular than Hamas.
Making trade deals with the United States and other places and have a much more normal form of life. We're very honored by that. As you know, we did a very great job with India and Pakistan, and we had India in. It looks like we're going to be making a trade deal with India. And we had Pakistan in. It looks like we're going to be making a trade deal.
I love this title. My intelligence community is wrong, Trump.
With Pakistan, and it's a beautiful thing to watch. Serbia, Kosovo, likewise, they've been fighting for years, and as you know, we brought that one to a conclusion. And now we have a couple of big ones. We have Russia, Ukraine, which is making a little bit of progress, and we have Israel, and nobody really knows what that one is all about. We're going to find out pretty soon, I guess.
Mr. President, the Iranian foreign minister this afternoon said if the U.S. is serious about negotiations, that you would call up Israel and request that they stop their airstrikes. Will you make that request?
Well, I think it's very hard to make that request right now. If somebody's winning, it's a little bit harder to do than if somebody's losing. But we're ready, willing, and able, and we've been speaking to Iran, and we'll see what happens.
Mr. President, what was the thought process behind the 2-week timetable?
Just time to see whether or not people come to their senses.
Mr. President, did the Europeans help at all in talking with the Iranians?
No, they didn't help. No. Iran doesn't want to speak to Europe. They want to speak to us. Europe is not going to be able to help in this one.
20 years ago, you were an administration that attacked a Middle East country on the idea of questionable intelligence of weapons of mass destruction. How is this moment different with Iran?
Well, there were no weapons of mass destruction. I never thought there were. And that was somewhat pre-nuclear. You know, there was a nuclear age, but nothing like it is today. And it looked like I'm right about the material that they've gathered already. It's a tremendous amount of material. And I think within a matter of weeks, or certainly within a matter of months, they're going to be able to have a nuclear weapon. We can't let that happen. I was very much opposed to Iraq. I said it loud and clear, but I was a civilian, but I guess I got a lot of publicity. But I was very much opposed to the Iraq war. And I actually did say, don't go in, don't go in, don't go in. But I said, if you're going to go in, keep the oil. But they didn't do that.
What intelligence do you have that Iran is building a nuclear weapon? Your intelligence community has said they have no evidence that they are at this point.
Well, then my intelligence community is wrong. Who in the intelligence community said that?
Your Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard.
She's wrong.
My intelligence community sucks. My lawyers can't do shit. All I want to do is foment war with Iran, and my intelligence community is up the bag. Why won't they say, am Israel high? The only reporter asking real questions so far, pushing back as opposed to when will you nuke Iran, sir? Yeah. Everyone only cares about when will you nuke Iran, please? Nuke Iran, queen? Nuke Iran tonight, queen? A little bit of, can we have a crumb of nuking Iran, please?
The president, please in any way helping Iran at this moment? We're hearing reports of mysterious planes landing in Iran from China.
See, right back to the good stuff.
I don't know. They say that they're there to take people out, but I can't tell you about that. I get along very well with China, get along very well with President Xi. I like him. He likes me. We have a very good relationship. We'll see what happens. I can't imagine them getting involved.
The decision that you need to make on Iran, whether to strike militarily, is this the biggest decision you'll have to make as president?
Well, I can't tell you that. I have to see what happens. I can't, really say that. It depends what the decision is. But I wouldn't really be able to tell you that now. I'll tell you in about a year from now. Maybe 5 years or 10 years from now. You never know about decisions. You never really know.
Would you support a ceasefire while the negotiations happen?
I might, depending on the circumstances.
Would you?
Former Congressman
It's very hard to stop. I will say this. It's very hard to stop when you look at it. Israel's doing well in terms of war. And I think you would say that Iran is doing less well. It's a little bit hard to get somebody to stop.
Sir, Liam Cosgrove was here, and former Congressman Matt Gaetz threw out an interesting idea suggesting that if you were to broker a deal where nuclear inspectors go into both Israel and Iran, that you could win a Nobel Peace Prize, and they might even rename it the Trump Peace Prize. Did you hear those? What do you think of that?
Well, they should give me
Oh my God. What is happening, dude? What the is happening? What is going on, brother? How is this a real question? How do you go home at night and think to yourself that you are providing a valuable service? Is it worth the 60 grand a year that you make? What is happening? You have an unprecedented opportunity through historic times to just like ask a halfway decent question.
The Nobel Prize for Rwanda, and if you look, the Congo, or you could say Serbia, Kosovo, you could say a lot of them. You could say, the big one is India and Pakistan. I should have gotten it 4 or 5 times. I should get it for the, I would think the Abraham Accords would be a good one too.
But what do you
They
think
won't
of
give
that
me a
idea?
Nobel Peace Prize because they only give it to liberals.
Would you support Iran being able to have nuclear, or would you support Iran being able to have civilian nuclear energy capabilities up to 3.76%?
You know, they're sitting on the top of one of the largest piles of oil in the world. I just don't know why they need that for civilian.
Bro, they're a whole ass sovereign nation. What do you mean? Why don't they just use oil? What is this nuclear? Just use the oil. Like, why are you getting to make these decisions for a whole ass other country, man? Also, I don't like it when I hear any American politician talk about another country's oil reserves, okay? That in my mind instantly is ringing alarm bells no matter why he's bringing it up. You should be never talking about oil reserves, okay? Yeah, it's the did somebody say oil? Does anyone have that meme? It's a bit of a boomer meme at this point, but
Some new oil rigs over here.
Don't say that.
Did somebody say oil?
this is the worst version of that meme. Jesus Christ, I couldn't find a better one. This is the first one that came up.
Welcome to the rice field, motherfucker.
You know, it's one thing for certain countries to say, hey, I want to have a certain amount where I can go.
Would they use Creedence? That's the opposite of a patriotic song. No, they're using Creedence correctly. They're using both War Pigs and Creedence Clearwater correctly in both instances. They're actually joking about. They're saying that
We need it for electricity, we need it for air conditioners, etc. But when you're sitting on one of the largest oil piles anywhere in the world, it's a little bit hard to see why you need that. Yeah.
Are you concerned that Iran or its proxies would wage terror attacks against American targets abroad if you order military action?
We're always concerned about that, and we have to take them out and be very strong. You're even.
Oh my God.
See why you need that. Yeah.
Are you concerned that Iran or its proxies would wage terror attacks against American targets abroad if you order military action?
We're always concerned about that, and we have to take them out and be very strong. You're even in danger talking to me right now. Do you know that? You are in danger talking to me right now. So I should probably get out of here, but you guys are actually in danger. Can you believe it?
One more, Mr. President. Is it still your expectation that NATO countries spend 5% of their GDP on defense spending?
Well, I think they should do that. I don't think we should, but I think they should. We've been supporting NATO so long. In many cases, I believe paying almost 100% the cost. So I don't think we should, but I think that the NATO countries should, absolutely.
And if a country like Spain decides not to?
Well, NATO's going to have to deal with Spain. Spain's been a very low payer. They were always a very low payer. They were either good negotiators or they weren't doing the right thing. I mean, I think Spain has to pay what everybody else has to pay. Spain has been notorious for low pay. You know who else was a low payer, just about the lowest? A place called Canada. Because Canada said, why should we pay when the United States will protect us free? And they've been right about that.
ICE. Ukraine, you've been making progress towards a peace deal, but I don't know if you know this, but Lindsey Graham and Mike Pompeo were there on the ground in Ukraine, seemingly doing the opposite, trying to provoke the Ukrainians to keep.
We're going to see, and people have to be very careful with what they say. They got to be very careful with their mouth, because their mouth can get them into a lot of trouble.
One more. ICE. ICE has said that they're trying to arrest up to 3,000 individuals a day. There are some communities that are saying they are fearful of being wrongfully detained or separating some families, even if they're undocumented. Is the fear in some of these communities worth the deportations of these undocumented individuals, a mass deportation program?
It's a tough subject because, look, we have farmers. I love farmers. I won 80%, 85% of the farmers, and I love them, and I'm never going to do anything to hurt our farmers. And you can also say the leisure business, etc. There are some businesses where you have a disproportionate amount of people that are the people that you're talking about. At the same time, we have to get the criminals out of our country.
Yeah, except you're not doing that because that's not real. Because the overwhelming majority of people are the people that you're now saying we shouldn't be going after. This is literally the same course correction that happened with abortion. I'm losing my mind. All it does is just harm people in the process. Every single time, dude. Every single time. And what's worse, what I think will breed even more hostility towards Trump, even though liberals are so stupid and don't say anything, is the fact that they recognize, like the administration obviously recognizes and always did, that this was simply to make white supremacists feel better, okay? To galvanize the base of support. And they're no longer doing it as hard in red states. They're only causing this instability and danger in blue states because they know that when they go do these like mass deportation dragnets, it breeds resentment towards the administration. And they don't want to breed additional resentment towards the administration in red states, so they're just going to do this in blue states. Knowing full well that it harms commerce and it destroys the social fabric of society. Can you explain what you mean by this is the same course correction as abortion? Yeah. Republicans ran on anti-abortion. Abortion is murder. Abortion is murder. Okay. Once it finalized, when Roe v. Wade, when the decision came down from the Supreme Court, Republicans got very mad that all of a sudden This meant that their daughters could not get an abortion if they needed one. They realized that they could not get an abortion if it's even if it was a medical necessity, or the very fact that there was some sort of legal hurdle that doctors were supposed to clear actually increased the pain that women felt in times of desperate medical intervention. So what do? All of these Republican states, slowly but surely, with the exception of some of the most insane ones that don't care about public resentment, turned around and said, okay, abortion is murder, but like honestly, maybe murder is kind of fine. Murder is fine in cases of rape, pedophilia, incest. Murder is fine in cases of like medical intervention being a necessity to save the carrier. Why did they do that? I thought it was all murder. Basically recreating the same dynamic that is more restrictive than it was before, but basically arriving at, in many states, the same exact dynamic that existed before the Roe v. Wade decision. Okay? You've said this before, but in a weird way, you almost have to respect the moral consistency of those who genuinely believe in banning abortion with zero exceptions and deporting all immigrants with zero exceptions. They're evilists, but at least they understand the moral incongruity of having a halfway solution. Republican policies are inherently violent and anti-human, okay? Anti-prosperity, anti-human. Most Republicans that think that they want a certain policy very quickly realize that they don't like that policy once it's implemented. This is why I don't place too much emphasis on polls on this sort of stuff, especially when there is no real counter messaging campaign coming from the Democratic front on the issue of immigration. Do you understand? That's why I kept saying over and over again, once these deportations start, they're never going to be mass deportations in the way that they designed it. 20 million migrants, you cannot do that. That is insane. That is Hitlerian through and through. The American public will rise up far before it gets to that point. And they have been already, even without Democratic leadership leading the charge. That is precisely the reason why Donald Trump is underwater even on immigration, which was supposed to be his most popular policy. Because both abortion and immigration are totally made up problems. These problems are made up. There is no such thing as women getting fun abortions. That is made up. That's not a real thing. But if you ask Republicans, they were like, "Whoa, the libtards are letting women get abortions for fun." Shut the fuck up. Okay? It was a matter always of bodily autonomy for women. But people allowed themselves to get swept away with right-wing rhetoric around this. Just like immigration has never constituted a national security concern. There is no evidence to suggest that undocumented migrants are responsible for a larger share of crimes. As a matter of fact, the only empirical evidence readily available is the exact opposite, that undocumented migrants cause less crime per capita than natural-born U.S. citizens. So the entire notion that undocumented migration is creating so much chaos and so much instability in this country was always made up. It was hysterical. And yet, with no adequate form of legislation coming from the Democratic side and no counter-messaging campaign from the Democratic side, something that I demanded from the Democrats when they were in charge for years and years and years, as a matter of fact, we allowed public sentiment to be shaped in the direction of a totally made-up issue. And if the issue is totally made up, and the solutions that you have for this totally made-up issue are actually incredibly violent, incredibly destabilizing, and also hurting the profit motive, which is something that even the small business Hitlerites care about above all else, then people are going to be angry. Abortion is a made-up problem. Immigration isn't a made-up problem. The only thing is, at the end, immigrants on average contribute more than they take, and statistics are poorly analyzed, can make people think it's a problem. No, immigration is a made-up problem as well. The only problem with immigration is that we don't actually process the migrants that are coming into the country adequately. The only difference between an undocumented migrant and a documented one is documentation. The real problem is the violation of human rights of all of these people that could just as easily have an expedited process and get the proper paperwork. Not only is it not a problem, but it's also quite literally a good thing. And on top of that, could be an even better thing for everyone involved in the process of labor if these people got amnesty. It's also a popular solution. It's a far more popular solution than mass deportations. Not even right now when mass deportations have actually gone down in popularity as a policy, but always has been. Except the problem is the media never talks about the second question that is always asked in these immigration polls. The first question that's always asked in immigration polls is, do you believe in mass deportation? And over the course of the last couple of years, due to the factors that I just mentioned, made up hysteria, no counter messaging, people's anger and resentment to worsening material conditions, people have started saying more and more frequently that they want mass deportation. Republicans have successfully dominated the discourse on this. It rose to almost 60%. But those exact same polls also show consistently that if given two options, mass deportation or mass conditional amnesty, people overwhelmingly favor mass conditional amnesty. That's it. But if the media never covers the mass conditional amnesty and the Democratic Party has no interest in pushing for mass conditional amnesty, then people are not even aware that this is an option. So they go with the only solution that they think is valid for a problem that they now believe exists when it doesn't exist. Immigrants constitute a national security threat. They're doing a fuck ton of crimes, and we have to deport all of them. It's that simple.
And we're looking at doing something where, in the case of good reputable responsibility for the people that they hire, and let them have responsibility, because we can't put the farms out of business. And at the same time, we don't want to hurt people that aren't criminals. Most of the people that came in over the last 3 years under Biden, I would say probably 3.5 to 4 years, those people, you have a lot of criminals, you have a lot of, we're looking at that very closely. You've had people that have worked on farms for 20 years. It's very hard to go in there and say, you're coming out. But we're going to let the farmers take responsibility. They're great people. They'll do it. They know the good and the bad.
Wow, it turns out he's pro illegal immigration, it seems. How crazy. How crazy. Doors open. How crazy.
So the hard part about this is it's not like a normal war where people wear uniforms. They don't wear uniforms. But we have murderers that came out of the last 4 years. We have murderers. We have drug lords. We have people that we don't want to. We have prisoners. They emptied out Venezuela and many countries. They emptied out their prisons into the United States. We have to get those people out. But we have stone cold murders, 11,888 murders. We've already gotten a lot of them out of here, but we don't want them. So we have to be careful. But I never want to hurt our farmers. Our farmers are great people. They keep us happy and healthy and fat.
Are there other cities that you're going to try to replicate what you've done in Los Angeles?
Well, we had a big victory last night in the Court of Appeals with respect to Los Angeles, but really the country, where Gavin Newsom, who's really an incompetent governor, he's just doing a terrible job between his buyers, responsibility for the people that they hire, and let them have responsibility, because we can't put the farms out of business. And at the same time, we don't want to hurt people that aren't criminals. Most of the people that came in over the last 3 years under Biden, I would say probably 3.5 to 4 years, those people, you have a lot of criminals, you have a lot of, we're looking at that very closely. You've had people that have worked on farms for 20 years. It's very hard to go in there and say, you're coming out. But we're going to let the farmers take responsibility. They're great people. They'll do it. They know the good and the bad.
Wow, it turns out he's pro illegal immigration, it seems. How crazy. How crazy. Doors open. How crazy.
So the hard part about this is it's not like a normal war where people wear uniforms. They don't wear uniforms. But we have murderers that came out of the last 4 years. We have murderers. We have drug lords. We have people that we don't want to. We have prisoners. They emptied out Venezuela and many countries. They emptied out their prisons into the United States. We have to get those people out. But we have stone cold murders, 11,888 murders. We've already gotten a lot of them out of here, but we don't want them. So we have to be careful. But I never want to hurt our farmers. Our farmers are great people. They keep us happy and healthy and fat.
Are there other cities that you're going to try to replicate what you've done in Los Angeles?
Well, we had a big victory last night in the Court of Appeals with respect to Los Angeles, but really the country, where Gavin Newsom, who's really an incompetent governor, he's just doing a terrible job between his fires, his burning down, his forest fires, and now Los Angeles.
Let's take you to Geneva to listen to the Iranian foreign minister.
Against the regime, and we will continue to do so as long as the atrocities.
Wouldn't the mass amnesty thing just fill our jail with migrants? What? How would that work? If the overwhelming majority of undocumented migrants are simply awaiting their paperwork and have done zero crimes, why would they be in jail? Why would they go to jail? Do you just think that when someone is an undocumented migrant, they're just like, they have like a different brain? They're just like violent? Is that what happened after Ronald Reagan? Mass amnesty was offered under Ronald Reagan. This might be a dumb take, but isn't this just a few steps removed from slavery? No, you're absolutely nailing it. That's the whole point. No, that is what it is. The undocumented migrant structure is a different form of slavery. That's precisely what it is. When undocumented migrants do not have the same workplace protections, the limited workplace protections that the documented U.S. citizens have. Okay? Therefore, they are disposable. You can discard them. It is a byproduct of our endless greed, endless capitalist greed. Other countries, at least, will do a different version of this, where there's a two-tier wage structure for immigrants, but legal migrants, born out of the currency exchange rate or the cost of living differences in their home countries, as opposed to their host countries. It's like Polish migration into England, right? They already take advantage of that. The solution to that is also wage parity, for the record. If you want migrant hands to work inside of your national boundaries without depressing wages, you have to implement, by way of legislation, that, of course, no government's going to do on their own volition, so you have to allow them to join labor unions and fight for that. But you have to do that through wage parity, okay? In America, we do the migrant workforce, and even that is not enough of a destabilizing and depressive force on the existing wages for all laborers. We then also take a ton of undocumented laborers as well and work them to the goddamn bone for pennies on the dollar. And then we discard them at a moment's notice when they demand more wages, or they say, hey, there's a lot of issues on the job site. This is beneficial to capital owners. This is precisely the reason why complete mass deportation is a pipe dream for white supremacists that someone like Donald Trump is never going to implement. He's not ideologically invested in ridding the national boundaries of all brown and black people.
Continue, and the regime would stop the aggression and ensuring its non-reoccurrence. Iran's nuclear program is peaceful and has always been under the IAEA's safeguards and monitoring. Hence, armed attacks against safeguarded nuclear facilities by a regime which is not a party to any WMD treaties is a serious crime and violation of international law. In this content, I express grave concern on non-condemnation of these heinous attacks by E3 and EU. Iran is ready to consider diplomacy once again, and once aggression is stopped and the aggressor is held accountable for the crimes committed. In this regard, I made it crystal clear that Iran's defense capabilities are not negotiable. We support continuation of discussion with E3 and EU and express our readiness to meet again in the near future.
So you don't talk to the US? You don't talk to the US?
Thank you.
Right, Iran is ready to consider negotiations once hostilities end. Iran's defense capabilities, however, are non-negotiable, but Iran expressing its readiness to meet again in the near future. The words there of the Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi. He was speaking after that meeting with his European counterparts, the foreign ministers of the UK, France and Germany, as well as the EU foreign policy chief in Geneva. I believe we have there also Milena Veselinovic. She is in Geneva, where that meeting was taking place. So listening to that, I guess the first obvious question, Milena, it doesn't sound like there was a breakthrough at this point, right? There's no breakthrough on uranium enrichment or some of those sticky issues.
Yeah, what they said is Iran will talk to the U.S. if Israel stops bombing, which is something that Trump said he is not going to do. Iran will only agree to meet with the United States for renewed nuclear talks if Israel agrees to stop striking the country, Iranian negotiators told their European counterparts at a meeting today in Geneva, Switzerland, according to CNN, which of course is a perfectly valid demand. What do you mean we're going to negotiate our nuclear program while you're literally striking us? It's an incredibly basic demand. That's the most reasonable perspective.
That's right, Sami. It doesn't sound like there was any breakthrough or even any progress. Hearing about Araghchi, the Iranian.
Like the only way this actually comes to a reasonable conclusion, and you seem mad at losing. Losing what? Brother, who do you think is more likely to be drafted? A 34-year-old Twitch streamer or you to go and fight Israel's war and get lasered by a Shahed drone in the process, have your dick blown off? Me or you? Who do you think loses more in this process? Even if you don't care necessarily about all of the lives lost on the Iranian side. Age of conscription is 35. Yeah, guys, I don't think I'm getting drafted. I'm leaving this goddamn country before I get drafted, okay? Stop being stupid. Yeah. Like, what do you think Fortunate Son is about? It's not the politicians and their children that will go and serve America's foreign policy interests. It will be you and your loved ones. Okay?
Foreign minister, he is basically reiterating what has consistently been the Iranian position. He is condemning the attacks on their nuclear facilities and attacks on Iran by Israel more generally. He also said that there was a serious violation of international law. He said that Iranian defense capabilities are non-negotiable, perhaps hinting that that request by the Western nations for Iran not just to not enrich uranium on its soil, but also to curb its ballistic missile program. So it really sounds from hearing all of that the two sides have really not met anywhere in the middle or anywhere close to it, coupled with the statements that we've also had. Sorry, it's very busy here, as you can tell. Lots of security personnel still milling through. Coupled with what we've heard already from the European diplomats, who really only just repeated things that we have also heard before about the need to de-escalate, about the need for Iran to continue their talks with the United States, something that they would not do as long as they're being attacked by Israel. So it does, from these two sets of statements, seem that these two sides are a complete polar opposite, and that not a breakthrough, but not even much progress was made at this meeting. It does leave questions as to where do we go from here. Now, US President Donald Trump has had that self-imposed deadline of 2 weeks that he's said he would give diplomacy, 2 weeks that he could either expand or shrink. And it will be potentially also based on what the European diplomats tell his administration about how today's meetings go. And It's incredible how important the stakes are here. We're talking about whether the US will join Israel in striking Iran, a move that could have wide-reaching and long-standing implications on the entire region. I think the seriousness of that is not lost on anyone here today. I think for that reason, these talks also ran much longer than we thought they would. They ran something close to 4 hours. However, even despite that, the hours of discussions, when the delegations came out, the words that we're saying, the substance of what they are saying really doesn't seem to have moved the dial at all in terms of reaching any kind of a compromise.
All right, we'll leave it there. Thanks to our correspondent, Milena Veselinovic, in Geneva, following that meeting between the Iranian foreign minister and his counterparts from France, Germany, the UK, and the EU.
On the first day, no one believed it would continue. It was a beautiful Friday, the eve of Eid al-Qadir, a religious holiday here.
Do you think everybody is in the wrong in this war? You're getting drafted, bud? No, I think there are wronged parties and parties that are doing the wrong. America, Western coalition forces, and Israel are the parties that are in the wrong. Everyone else that is resisting against them, regardless of whatever they've done in their domestic policies or whatever, are currently being wronged by the Western coalition forces, which includes Israel.
Then the war began. Our first thought was that there would be a quick ceasefire and it would stop.
They re-uploaded this vid after deleting it earlier.
But the explosion in the middle
why.
of Tehran told us we have to leave. The streets emptied, shops closed their doors. The city split in two, north for rich people and south for the poor. Government workers live in the north of Tehran. Many strikes happened there, and the rich evacuated. In the south of Tehran, life still goes on. Not fully, but some shops are open. Cars are in the street and people go out to buy sandwiches. Everyone says we'll stay. We prefer to die in our home. But I know from their voices, they just don't have anywhere to go. Parts of the city were thick with smoke from the oil depot hit overnight. Everyone seems afraid because it's now normal to see the Basij militia, the intelligence services, fully armed, riding on their motorcycles on the streets. They stop cars and people and saying no one is allowed to film anything. They stopped me. My heart was beating so fast. I tried to keep my hands from shaking, but my face went pale. When you talk with many people, they say they hate the system. Some criticize the regime with no fear in their eyes. They just ask, what will happen to us? What will happen if bombing spreads all over the city? To me, their faces say, it is enough. Almost half a century is enough. We want democracy. We want freedom.
CNN's Fred Pleitgen is the first Western journalist to enter Iran since this latest conflict with Israel began. He's there with our Claudia Otto. He attended a massive protest in Tehran where protesters chanted death to America, death to Israel. Fred has more from Tehran.
Massive crowds have turned out here in central Tehran to protest against...
I don't get it. Why are they not welcoming America and Israel bombs as liberators? It's so strange. There's only two reasons. There's two different ways that consent is manufactured here. Either saying these guys are all violent, scary, hate America, and they say death to America, and that is a way to create permission and manufacture consent for bombing. Or by saying, oh, people actually really want American bombs to come in. Both are still, like, people want the regime to go away and people want the... and people welcome the Israeli bombing campaign. Those are the two different ways that these guys manufacture consent. Isn't it crazy? CNN is allowed in Tehran, but Al Jazeera is not allowed in Tel Aviv. A protest in Tehran, not against the Iranian government, but Israel and America. Ain't that supposed to cheer and celebrate Israel and America sending rockets their way? Media blackout in Israel, but Western media is broadcasting from Iran. Iran doesn't want to be another Palestine. Those are the ones who can protest without repression. Someone says death is sweeter than honey. That just shows how much people love their country. Iran has a right to defend itself.
Israel strikes against Iran, but also against the policies of the Trump administration as well. Many of them were chanting death to America, were chanting death to Israel. We saw them burn American flags and burn Israeli flags. Punch the United States.
By the way, the burning of the Israeli flag alongside the American flag once again shows that these actions are not conducted through pure animosity towards Jews or anti-Semitism. But that's a whole different line of logical thinking that many Americans refuse to arrive at.
It's an Israel in the mouth, he says.
I read about Iranian Jews the other day. Western sanctions created an economy in which they have insufficient wealth to obtain housing in literally any other place, especially Israeli rent. Also said Western sanctions have resulted in the inability for Jewish Iranian scholars, engineers, etc. to practice their profession. So most of them work in textile shops, etc. A Western imposed brain drain, just like the early days of Nazi Germany. Yeah.
Trump, you are threatening my leader, this woman says. Don't you know my nation believes death is sweeter than honey? What do you have, Israel? He says. You have nothing. You are occupiers, unreligious. You're killing people, killing women. You kill everyone. You're terrorists. So you can see that anger here being voiced by many of the folks who are walking here in this protest, whereas the Iranian government has said that as long as the Israelis continue their bombing campaign of sites here in Iran, there will be Iranian missiles flying towards
my dude with the trap star. Look.
Through their bombing campaign of sites here in Iran,
he got the trap star. He got that shit on, dude. Hey, yo.
Will be Iranian missiles flying towards Israeli territory. They're calling on President Trump to try and end this direct confrontation. Otherwise, they say, there could be a direct military.
Iranian Gen Z hates the regime. Iranian Gen Z today. It's so funny how ass mad people get when they see like Iranians disrespect the American flag, or when the Houthis or anyone in Yemen really lights the Israeli flag on fire alongside the American flag, and I laugh at that. And people were making a big deal about that. They're like, they hate us. It's like, yeah, of course they hate us, you idiot. We're killing their families. Why would they ever like it? Would you like them? You hate them. They haven't done shit to you, and you still hate them. At least they have a good reason to hate us. Government, especially. Not our culture, not our cultural output, not our media. But they hate our governments. And of course they hate our governments. We're killing them. You hate them. They haven't done shit to you, and you hate them. But you can't even comprehend how our bombing and our destabilization might cause some resentment in the goddamn region. Stupid.
Confrontation between Iran and the United States. The Iranians say it's not something they want, but they also say it's something that they're ready for. Fred Pleitgen, CNN, Tehran.
Former NATO Supreme Allied Commander Admiral James Stavridis joins me now. Admiral, first of all, what do you make of a protest like that in Iran? Obviously, the Iranian government wants to see people.
Hasan, CNN and other Western media only show protests of the super regime aligned people. Look at the crowd. It's all women who are super covered in black and all that. These are not the regular Iranians. These are hardline Islamic Republic supporters. First of all, it's ridiculous to say that there aren't hardline Islamic Republic supporters that are regular Iranians. They are regular Iranians. There are, however, also secular Iranians as well. They are not going to be flying the placard of the Ayatollah, but they still share that same resentment and hostility toward, understandable enmity towards Israel and America. I think people forget that, like, you're wrong on this, Hasan. Oh my God. Israel has already killed 600 plus Iranians and severely injured 2,000 plus in the last week of bombing. Why would anyone, unless they are the most reactionary psychopaths actually think this is fine. Please stop treating people like they are a different organism just because they're in Iran. There are certainly people who hate the Islamic Republic still to this day, okay? There are. Why do they hate the regime? Because the regime has been brutal to them. It's been repressive to them. It might have even jailed or tortured or killed their family members. Okay, now Israel is doing that with bombs. The reason for not liking the Ayatollah or the Islamic Republic is born out of the violence that they've experienced under the Ayatollah and the Islamic Republic. Once there is a foreign entity, one that has already caused instability in the country in the past, comes in and is now officially more violent, at least right now, then of course people are going to hate that more. It's that simple. I don't like the American government. I don't like the American government. If someone deployed a nuke on America, if a significantly more powerful country that doesn't even exist right now, but if a significantly more powerful country deployed a nuke and wiped out the southern states or something, I think a lot of Americans, myself included, would be a little disturbed by that, don't you think? Americans, of course, can never understand this. That's the reason why, in this analogy, I always have to use an alien force as a as a substitute, because there is, as it stands, no country that has the capacity to be a dominant force, a force that has already destabilized America, a force that continues to destabilize America and can just use technology and technological superiority over America to just like wipe out half the population. And I know that Chatter wasn't saying that the Chatter was defending Israel's bombing campaign. They're just saying that CNN is purposely showing the minority position of hardline Islamic Republic supporters that negatively paints Iranians. But no, it's not necessarily a minority position either. The anti-America position and the anti-Israel position is not the minority position, is what I'm saying. It's not about secular versus religious. I think the Chatter is saying that the majority of Iranians are not supporters of Islamic Republic and that the protest does not reflect most people, despite the fact that they both hate Israel, bombing them more than the government. I already factored that in, and that's why I said this is another way of manufacturing consent. One way of manufacturing consent is by saying Iranians are actually super on board with the Israeli bombing campaigns because they hate the regime that much. The other way to manufacture consent is showing, ooh, look at these scary hijabi women of the streets that are saying America and Israel, they hate us. We should bomb them. I know the smoke alarm is going on. My dad is cooking, as always.
People out on the streets protesting, sending a message, certainly to folks in the United States and perhaps in Israel. You had Prime Minister Netanyahu speaking directly to Iranians several days ago, encouraging them to rise up. That seems difficult, obviously, even though we know there are deep divisions within Iran during the bombing campaign. Not clear a lot of people are going to be rising up against the government. I'm wondering how important for Iran is a demonstration like that.
It's important for the government, which I think you're correct is increasingly brittle, simply because of all the economic pressure the country's been under for much of a decade, as well as our campaign right now. But I think the West and the Israelis would be wise to look at the reaction, for example, of the Ukrainians. When the bombs start dropping, nations tend to pull together. Look at the Brits during World War II. So I think there's probably a thread of sincerity that runs through those demonstrations as that population reacts in defiance to the bombing of Israel.
We're seeing diplomatic efforts going underway in Europe between European foreign ministers and Iran. Do you put much stock in that? Do you think those are important?
I think they are. Certainly the three primary actors in the drama at the moment are Iran, Israel, and the United States. But there are two other nexi of power that I think are important to keep in mind. One is Europe and the Europeans, hence the importance of these talks in Geneva. Let's face it, Europe, the second largest economy in the world after the United States collectively, stands to lose an awful lot economically. They're within range of Iranian missiles. They have a real stake in what's unfolding here. And I think they could nudge the United States toward a diplomatic solution.
Fuck no.
The other pair that we don't talk about much are Russia and China, both of whom regard Iran as an important client state, and both have tools they can use to try and push toward a diplomatic solution. So let's hope all of that pressure collectively somehow moves this toward a diplomatic solution, although at the moment, it looks more like military action ahead to me.
I've talked to some Israelis who are supportive of what the government here is doing, and they're concerned about losing momentum. They feel like there has been successful strikes by Israel against Iran. Israel has said that they kind of have freedom of movement in the skies, though not complete, because obviously we saw missiles being launched into Israel today as well as yesterday. But from a military standpoint, is momentum something that might be lost with this pause by the Trump administration?
I don't think so. Given the fact that it's only 2 weeks maximum, don't forget President Trump said within the next 2 weeks I'll make a decision. He didn't say I'm pausing for 2 weeks, then I'll announce a decision. I think more action could frankly come at any time. And 2 weeks is not a long time. In fact, I think it actually improves the chances of success in the mission because the U.S. is putting even more forces in the region to conduct a strike successfully if the U.S. decides to go ahead and do it. So I don't see this 2-week interregnum as a momentum breaker. I look at it, hopefully, I suppose, as one last opportunity, kind of last exit before the tunnel for diplomacy to have a chance.
If the U.S.'s role, if there is going to be one, a military role in offensive operations, is to target and use the weapons only they have against this Fordo facility, does that actually meet the military objectives of Israel, the elimination of Iran's nuclear facilities? Because there's obviously concern that over what we may not know, where enriched plutonium may have been moved to. These things are moved around with some regularity. There could be sites that we are unaware of, that Israel is unaware of as well, without actually having forces on the ground inspecting these sites. Can you really be sure Iran's nuclear facilities have been destroyed?
We got to do boots on the ground military warfare instead.
You cannot be. And this is what you and I are old enough to remember Don Rumsfeld. He used to talk about knowns, and that's what you're describing.
Using Donald Rumsfeld's very famous quote, not as a negative, but instead as a positive way to advocate for yet another failure of foreign policy is incredible. This is the liberal outlet, by the way. Chatters, we are talking about the liberal outlet CNN.
Iran's a huge country, 2.5 times the size of Texas, mountainous. It has a population of 90 million. There's an awful lot of space that Iran could use, and they have a lot of resources in terms of population. So at the end of the day, a single bunker-busting bomb would be a feel-good moment. I think it would be a successful mission. But those known unknowns of, are there other programs? What would the response be of Iran lashing back? Would they try to close the Strait of Hormuz? Would they attack U.S. forces in the region? There are many known unknowns that ought to mitigate.
Yeah, this is an argument against American involvement. If it's going to be a spectacular failure, unless it's a long, drawn-out, boots-on-the-ground invasion, which will end America 100%.
Against this strike, at least until we've given diplomacy further opportunity.
Yeah, and of course the unknown is one bunker buster bomb enough? Would it take multiple? Would that even work? These have not been used in a situation like this. Admiral, I appreciate.
Israel's defense minister said this morning he's ordered attacks on, quote, symbols of the regime in Iran. He said one of Israel's goals is to destabilize Iran's religious leadership. Holly Williams is near the Iranian border, where she spoke to a group that wants to topple the regime. Holly, good morning.
Good morning, Vlad. Israel's military says that overnight, more than 50 of its fighter jets flew non-stop over Iran's capital, Tehran, hitting nuclear-related locations and missile production sites. We are now more than a week into this war, and Iran's air defense systems are in tatters.
Is it possible that the Iranian regime could collapse because of this conflict?
Yeah. The regime is weakening.
Kausa Fatahi is a leader in one of Iran's outlawed opposition parties, living in exile across the border in Iraq. Her group represents the Kurdish ethnic minority. Iran's government considers them a terrorist organization.
Oh my God. Tatters, Western propaganda in full swing? No, but this was Chris Hedges' assessment as well, that the Iranian anti-air defenses have been depleted. And the very fact that they can do 50 bombing missions overnight implies that they are infinitely more vulnerable. Like, they're putting their launchers in an infinitely more vulnerable predicament, because the moment that they launch, if Israel is close enough, they can just like hit the launchers and eliminate even more launchers. This is probably the reason why the number of missiles launched in the salvos have diminished. Also, Westerners love using Kurds as a point of propaganda. It's their favorite thing to do. However, while the number of missiles that are sent in these barrages have decreased, their hit rate has obviously increased as a consequence of this, because they're, I think, using more advanced missiles now, as opposed to the previous stock that they were deploying. But I think Israel's best defense is a strong offense strategy here, which of course can only be conducted with complete Western support, refuelers, complete access over Syrian airspace to make the distance to Iran. All of that amounts to diminishing the anti-air missile systems of Iran. I'm not a missile autist by any means, as you guys know. So these are enormous areas. 50 planes is basically nothing. No, 50 planes is not nothing. Don't be crazy. Are you kidding me? Being able to strike 50 times overnight implies that your anti-air capabilities have diminished. They're also talking about striking Tehran too. You can only do that because you have successfully destroyed a decent chunk of the anti-air capabilities that Iran has. Like, that is air supremacy. I'm sorry to report. Are you kidding me? Regardless of how large Iran is, the launchers themselves are mobile, which is why they're harder to target. Israel's initial claims are that there were like 100 launchers and they've eradicated like a third of the launchers. Having said that, they still clearly have impactful strikes. Iran does.
They want to topple the Iranian regime, and Fatahi told us American airstrikes might help that. But she does not want Israel or the US to engineer regime change.
We don't want their boots on the ground, obviously.
You want to rebuild your country yourselves. You don't want America to do it for you.
We don't want a made-up state.
Iran's supreme leader says any US military intervention will be met with irreparable damage. US military bases in this region are possible targets for retaliation, along with roughly 40,000 American troops here in the Middle East. In 2020, Iran attacked an American base here in Iraq with ballistic missiles.
Damn! A shockwave just rolled.
We were there days later to witness the extensive damage.
This is your bedroom.
Yeah, it was my bedroom.
Though no US. But now Israel has superiority in Iranian airspace, using it to take out missile sites and drones. We don't know what a weakened Iran may be capable of.
Iran's foreign minister said in an online post that his country still wants a diplomatic solution. He also said that Iran has never sought nuclear weapons, though just this month the UN's nuclear watchdog declared Iran in breach of its non-proliferation obligations. Gail.
Holly Williams, along the Iran border, we thank you.
We're back with the Fox News Alert. Iran launching new waves of missiles towards Israel as the regime threatens American interest in the region. Let's break down what Iran has fired at Israel this week and exactly where U.S. troops are located in the Middle East. First, let's look at the missile attacks that have happened. You can see they're averaging about 30 a day. It has started with more. They've got 2,000 to 3,000. We don't know exactly how many, but they're saying about the same average here at 30. They're going a little higher, upwards of 40 on the 14th and the 16th. And then as you...
Brother, they had lots of fake launches with specific electronic signals built to fool Israel. This was reported by analysts early on, but now has even been stated by Mohammed Marandi. Yeah. I'm only looking at... My only reason for saying that this analysis is probably not incorrect as far as air superiority is what Israel gets to do. Okay? If they get to fucking fly over Iranian airspace and bomb 50 different targets overnight, that means they've established air superiority. Iran has also stated that they've downed F-35s. We have yet to see any evidence of that. And we have seen evidence of at least one Israeli drone that they did successfully down. When they do actually successfully down Israeli aircraft, they show it instantly. At first I thought maybe they immediately took it in for investigation, but the fact that they have not, we did see evidence of the downed F-35. No, we didn't. Iran has yet to show any evidence for a downed F-35 or even a female pilot that is being held captive. Yeah, we saw, F-35,000. That's what we saw. The girth master of F-35s, the mothership. So, in any case, what was I saying? Who was saying Iran down the F-35? Iran was. The reason why I thought it was possible is because of what I've seen in American reporting about Yemen potentially damaging, according to American military sources, Yemen was capable with their limited anti-air defense system capabilities of damaging an F-35. That's what the American government statement was. That is why I thought maybe it is possible. Now it seems less probable, considering that there is no real evidence for this at all. I've only seen two photos. Both were AI. One wasn't even an F-35, but it was an AI photo. It was a damaged aircraft that didn't even look like an F-35. And the other one kind of looked like an F-35, but it was ginormous.
You see, it's starting to come down a little bit, but even as it comes down, even on the smallest missile launch of days, yesterday they hit a civilian hospital that we have been showing you. Now, let me just move to this because we got to talk about the actual missiles they're firing. And you can see on this graph, really the region. And of course, you've got Tehran here. Israel is over here. But then, of course, Gulf states down here where a lot of our U.S. interests are. And you look at the range of them from 500 kilometers all the way out to 2,000. They have a lot of short-range missiles, often the Fatahs you'll see fired out here, but it is the Shahabs that can really go wide. That is of great concern. And then lastly, let me just go back to, as we showed you that range of 2,000, obviously all of this is in there to include Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, in Kuwait, Ali Al Salem, been a long-time air base for us, a lot of our assets there, along with the deep water port in Bahrain. That is
I'm very uncomfortable seeing this country so close to our military bases. If they don't want to be bombed, why are they standing there so close in proximity to our military bases? Really tough.
Very sensitive situation. The Fifth Fleet calls that home. That is the threat picture as we wait to find out exactly what President Trump will do. Brian?
Yep, within 2 weeks. So let's bring in General Jack Griff. He's a retired four-star general, Institute of Study of Wars, a must-read every day. General, your thoughts first off.
This guy's an absolute monster. If you can't already tell by judging the book by its cover, you will very quickly realize how much of a monstrous piece of shit he is with what he says just now.
On the decrease in the number of ballistic missiles that Iran's been sending to Israel. Are they running out?
Yeah, they definitely are. I mean, it started on the 14th, and if you just look at it in 24-hour periods, 200 on the 14th, then 105 the next day, then 65 the next day, then 35, then 30, and now I think in the last 24 hours we're down to single digits. So there's no doubt that I think they are withdrawing some missiles and don't intend to use them in the event that the United States attacks, and they may be thinking of retaliation against us. That's a possibility. But there's no doubt that two things are happening. The Israelis are destroying their mobile missile launchers, and that's a tough target.
About 70?
Yeah, they started with 320, and they got more than half of them gone. They've hit their ballistic missile stockpiles. So the majority of the ballistic missiles are now gone, and that obviously is a good thing. And, of course, they're killing them as they're flying into Israel itself.
That I don't believe. He's basically throwing up fake numbers. I don't think Iran has said that they have 320 ballistic missile launchers. That's number one. Number two, the notion that they've been able to erode its stockpile, its stockpile of ballistic missiles is also capped. I do, however, judging by the estimation, judging by simply looking at successful hits on target, or how many missiles are launched, how many ballistic missiles are launched in these salvos, and the number of missiles that have been launched are diminished significantly. I do think that they have eliminated a lot of the launchers for sure. Not like the majority, but I think the early estimates was like a third. Having said that, Iran clearly has the capacity to strike Israel, even right now. Every single strike opens up the launchers to a counter, but I do think their capacity has been diminished, and their anti-air defense systems have been diminished, which is why I think now their launchers are under tremendous pressure from Israeli retaliation from the Israeli Air Force.
This is the only offensive weapon. They're flying drones, but they're not effective whatsoever.
So when you look at the waiting period that the president said, give me 2 more weeks, you got to think that each day that goes by with this pace of them shooting rockets and Israel taking out the launchers, it makes our troops a little bit safer, it makes it a little bit harder.
By the way, if you are Ukrainian and you are currently watching, the exact same drones that Russia uses on Ukrainian soil, in your capital, in your western cities, get easily picked off by the Iron Dome. Remember that Israel told the American government that they would not hand you an Iron Dome, despite the fact that America and Israel created the Iron Dome as a joint collaborative project. Oh my Lord. Early on, Biden entertained the idea of offering Ukraine an Iron Dome, which I thought was perhaps one of the best possible defensive weapons packages that you could have offered Ukraine. Now, Ukraine is a ginormous country as opposed to Israel, but there are clearly areas that could take advantage of the Iron Dome, like Kyiv, like Lviv, or numerous other places in Ukraine where like normal civilian existence could continue without fear of Russian drone attacks. So when you see the success of the Iron Dome in thwarting the Russian drones, because the Iranian drones are the same exact ones sometimes, remember that Israel directly fucking blocked it. They said, if we give Ukraine the Iron Dome, we'll basically be handing it to Russia, and we can't do that because Russia will take it and they will send that information to Iran, and then Iran will be able to find ways of intercepting the Iron Dome. I wonder how much destabilization and how much death and destruction that has amounted to. Think about that. If you're Ukrainian and you're like pro-America, pro-NATO, pro-Israel, because there are some Ukrainians who are pro-Israel, think about what that allegiance looks like for you.
to think that they're going to hit some of our assets in the region. Maybe we could put up.
The Iron Dome is for makeshift tube rockets, not Iranian missiles. No, the Iron Dome also is used to intercept the literal same fucking drones that are swarming Israel and Ukraine.
A map that shows where we have troops located.
Yeah. Well, they can range, if they can range Israel, they can range our bases, in the Gulf region. But I mean, I think there's a way to handle this, and I'm sure the president and his team have thought through this thing. Is if we're going to help at Fordow, because the Israelis have asked us to help finish this nuclear enterprise off once and for all, and I certainly think we should do that if they've asked for that help.
We've hit 12 sites already.
Yeah,
Israel has.
The nuclear enterprise is vast, and you covered it earlier. It's very redundant. It's resilient. Multiple sites, centrifuges, so you can spin up enriched uranium. Multiple sites, enriched uranium. They did that, to survive. The Ayatollah going into this, and the reason why he has never made a deal, is because he had built an enterprise to survive an attack, and he believes they can absorb the attack, survive it, recover it, and then rebuild. That is where this guy is. And I don't see him in the near term making a deal here whatsoever. I think after we take his enterprise down, his whole enterprise down, look at the Israelis have destroyed all 70 of their Air Force, gone. As we mentioned, the 12 nuclear sites damaged or destroyed. We finish off.
This is Chris Hedges' analysis on this is that Iran had Chinese anti-air defenses. I don't know if that's the case or not. I've seen no evidence for that. And Russian anti-air defenses, I believe that they might have had some Russian ones. I don't know if they have any Chinese ones. But goddamn, dude, if they didn't, what a major L. If they got 0 Chinese air defense systems, what the f were they doing? I mean, seriously. They had the S-300, but that's not enough. You need the 400. And even then, you need a lot more than you probably had. Russian S-300, more likely the older, I don't know. They bought 0 Chinese jets. I don't think the Air Forces, I don't think the Iranian Air Forces has got that much smoke. Their Air Force is so old, dude. Half of their shit is from the Shah era. They're operating on super, super old tech. So it's negligible. What I'm talking about is the one capability they have, which is anti-air defense systems, so that their missile launchers can be protected. I think the Mossad drone operation did a number, dude. They still fly MiGs. Yeah, they have a very limited number. It's nothing.
Off Fordow itself. And then leadership decapitated, military and nuclear scientists. Now they can recover nuclear scientists, but in the near term, major problem. And here's the other thing. Look at the isolation that Iran actually has, Brian. The proxies in the region, particularly Hezbollah, was organized to defend Iran against Israel. That is why they invested billions and billions in dollars, 150,000 rockets, a force of 60, 70,000 capable of fighting. They were in Syria as a ground force. How much have they fired since the war began?
0.
Nothing. They have thousands of missiles. Why haven't they fired? They have lost their political will. They are done.
Do you think
Hamas can't do anything? The other proxies haven't done anything. Where is Russia and China? They could obviously assist.
Bro, what the f do you mean Hamas can't do anything? When can Hamas ever do anything? That's insane. The only time when Hamas could have ever done anything is missiles over. That's so stupid. The point about Hezbollah is not incorrect. The point about Hezbollah is correct. I think that their entire leadership structure being wiped out. Their entire leadership structure has been wiped out, and I don't know if it's cope or not that they're waiting for the opportune moment to strike, or if they just literally don't have any capabilities. They've been reduced to a point where they can't entertain invoking the fury of Israel, because when Israel blows up Lebanon, they don't actually fight against Hezbollah. They kill the civilian population. While there's clear Iranian openness to talk about the U.S., the maximalist goal of zero enrichment by Tehran is likely further away because of the events of the past week. That assessment coexists with the reality that this war will almost certainly end with nuclear negotiations. Like, they're still talking about how these guys won't stand down from nuclear enrichment, which is so ridiculous. It's sovereignty. Of course they won't stand down. They shouldn't stand down. They should have nukes, to be fair. I'm not even talking about like a civilian program. I think if they had nuclear warheads, this conversation wouldn't be taking place. If they had nuclear warheads, the region would be significantly more stable. It's a major detriment that they do not.
This Iran here, they have missiles.
Right.
They're not. This regime is isolated. The proxies see it. I think the strategic partners see it. We are looking at the end here.
Do you believe the president should greenlight a Fordo hit using the bunker busters?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you think it'll be effective? Do you worry at all about it being able to wipe it out?
I think there's challenges when you go in 300 feet for sure, at the bottom of a mountain. We've never actually done that. But that doesn't mean you don't do it. I mean, Normandy was 50-50. I mean, it doesn't mean you don't do it. The alternative, I think, is unacceptable.
Do you believe that the president's chairman of the Joint Chiefs?
It's so psychotic. Like, comparing that to Normandy is hilarious, dude. We're the Nazis in this equation, dumbass. Like, straight up. We are the barbaric fascist state that is constantly expanding. Not Iran. You just said Iran should have nukes and that's psychotic? Yes. Because ironically enough, Iran... Okay. Let me explain something to you. I did this the other day, and I think it bears repeating. You don't get nukes because you want to use them. You get a nuke so that you don't get nuked. Okay? Because if you get nukes and you use your nuke, then you're going to get nuked. The entire reason for why you acquire nukes is so you don't get nuked. That's it. It's mutually assured destruction. That is precisely the reason why Israel has gotten nukes, so they can be a sovereign state. Unless you are under the Non-Proliferation Treaty or the banner of NATO protection and have American nukes like Turkey does, if you are a nation state that is outside of the Western umbrella of Western Empire, if you do not have nukes, then you are basically waiting until your country is turned into a proxy battle by two parties that do have nukes. That's it. Iran is a fantastic example of this reality, and the DPRK is a successful example of what happens when you have nukes. Ukraine is another example of a country that lost its nukes, that gave up its nukes, and look where Ukraine is at now. Doesn't Turkey have its own nukes? No. We have American nukes at the Incirlik base. You do not get nuclear proliferation so you can use them. You get nuclear proliferation so that the threat of using one stops other countries from actually doing things that violate your sovereignty. I am in favor of complete denuclearization. But in the absence of that reality, it is understandable for countries in the short term to actually get their own nukes if they want to be sovereign. The idea that like we shouldn't have countries have their own nukes because they're unstable, they're dangerous actors, is also stupid. There's only one nation state on the planet that has ever deployed not one but two nuclear arms on a civilian population that it was a belligerent against. That's pretty unstable. That's pretty dangerous. That country is the United States of America. No other country has done this. Countries have tested out nukes. Countries have deployed nukes. They have never been in combat as a belligerent against a totally separate nation state and its civilian population, except for the United States of America. So if there's one country that is the most belligerent, the scariest country, is the United States of America, the nation that also first invented the atom bomb, thinking that no one else would ever get access to this kind of information.
Chiefs of Staff, Secretary of Defense, DNI, do you believe they're advising him to do this?
I would suspect they are. If they asked, what they do is they lay out options and then the risk associated with everything, and then the president would ask, what's your recommendation? Now, listen, let me tell you something. This Eric Kurilla, who's the CENTCOM commander, that's been here a number of years, he's one of the best we have ever had in uniform as an operational commander. This guy has got his act together, and he is as steady as can be.
Does the president trust him?
Oh, absolutely. When he was working for Joe Biden and they had attacked us over 350 times in Iraq and Syria over the 4-year period, just listen to what I just said to you.
Right.
And he wanted to respond. He made
the fact that this freak likes Kurilla is terrifying, because as we read in reporting thus far, Kurilla, the head of U.S. CENTCOM, has Trump's ear and is also super pro striking Iran alongside Israel, and wants to make a name for himself, wants to develop a legacy for himself and Donald Trump, and has gone as far as suggesting that the retaliation from Iran will be restrained and will not meet the standard of significant deterrence if they are to strike Fordow, using the Qasem Soleimani assassination as an example of inconsequential acts of escalation from the American side. He is one of the most rabid Israel supporters in the military, and he is currently one of Trump's top advisors. This is a terrifying prospect, and one that all but shows that we're gearing towards military action.
recommendations to the president. He gave them a target list of 120. He didn't want to hit the proxies that were hitting us. He wanted to hit Iran to shut it down. And they never gave him permission. He's got a president now
that will listen.
Who's listening.
Call him the gorilla. I just want to tell you that in the New York Times today, a short time ago, Iran rejects Trump's call for surrender in war with Israel.
Predictable. I mean, he wants to survive this. The one thing I would say about the strike, the way to handle the strike, get the message to the Ayatollah. Mr. Ayatollah, we are conducting an air strike to support Israel's war.
Right.
And you know the reason why. And it's a one-off strike. We're not doing anything else. If you retaliate against us, then all bets are off. We're going to come for you with consequential force. And that would put his existence and his regime on the table.
Hope the president's watching, because that's fantastic advice. Back in an hour.
You got it.
All right, we got a Fox News alert. President Trump is preparing for an intelligence briefing with his national security team at 11 o'clock in the Oval Office. It comes as a senior Iranian official says they will reject any deal.
I like that we watch both CNN and Fox News and even NBC and ABC, CBS, because it basically shows you that despite like the aesthetics, the argument is always the same. Like both sides of the supposedly diverse media landscape fails to demonstrate any kind of diversity of opinion on this. There is not a single outlet that talks about the American majority opinion that we shouldn't be doing this. The only time where they barely talk about it is when they say, oh, MAGA is at odds. The MAGA base doesn't seem to, believe that Trump is or thought that Trump was an isolationist. Like, that is the only time where they offer a little bit of coverage about the American Democratic perspective. It's not just the Republican MAGA base that's like that is against going to war with Iran. The American Democratic Party is also entirely against military intervention in Iran. The problem is the party politicians are not. The party politicians are not against going to war with Iran on either side. That much is clear, which is why I repeat over and over again, the liberal fantasy demonstrated by a lot of people who voted for Kamala Harris, who claimed with no reasonable evidence whatsoever that Kamala Harris would operate with different standards, is so stupid. It's especially stupid because Kamala Harris isn't dead. She is very much alive right now, which means that as an alive person, she could just say that it's completely and utterly ridiculous to go to war with Iran. As far as I know, she has not said a damn word. I do, however, remember when she said she would be more hawkish against Iran than Trump when she was running. Liberals that fantasized about Kamala Harris being the liberator of the Palestinians have yet to hear from Kamala Harris talking about her concern with how the Trump administration has dealt with the Palestinian population so far. She has not said a damn word about that either. Yeah. Yusuf Munayyer says, Biden, Harris, and Clinton all told us Trump was a national security novice and nightmare. Have they tweeted anything opposing Trump's reckless flirtation with another Middle Eastern quagmire? No, because they don't oppose it. There is one main party in D.C., the War Party. That is it. Check the reply article. Even as party leaders seek to burnish their credentials, the resistance to Trump, they're tacitly and sometimes openly giving Trump a green light to lurch America into yet another open-ended war of choice. Yeah. For the record, I need you to understand something. This is precisely the reason why Hakeem Jeffries said, you can go to war with Iran. We think there is righteous cause for the U.S. to go to war with Iran. You just need to come to us in Congress and do it the right way. We will obviously give you the rubber stamp necessary to go to war with Iran. Just come to us. Oh, someone said the same thing. Harris obviously would have been against this war. Too bad she's dead now and can't say anything. Yep. Righteous cause, bruh. No, that's what Hakeem Jeffries said. Hakeem Jeffries released a statement literally saying Iran can never have nukes. Israel has a right to defend itself. Am Israel Chai. We must nuke Iran. But Mr. President, you have to do this with congressional approval. Please come to us and don't try to do this unilaterally.
With zero enrichment and will not bring in 4-star General Jack Keane, Institute of Study of War.
Harris is not dead. No, she is. No, she died. It's so sad. She must be. She must be dead because I ain't hear a single dang peep from Kamala Harris about both Gaza, the genocide. Every libtard told me that she was anti-genocide. Every goddamn libtard told me over and over again, Kamala Harris would not be the same as Trump, you idiot. You're so stupid. So where is she? Why hasn't she said a damn thing? I'll tell you this, if Kamala Harris were president now, we wouldn't be drifting into World War III with Iran right now. Trump is a faceless failure. We would be doing the exact same thing that we're doing right now. The only difference would be, in terms of our dealings with Israel and Iran, we were doing the 100% verbatim the exact same shit. 100%. The only thing that would be marginally different would be the way that the Democrats are actually talking about why we must do it. We'd be talking a whole game about how homophobic Iran is and how we must liberate the women there. We'd probably be a little bit more tactful about trying to implement regime change, be a little bit more competent in our imperial ambitions. But by and large, we know exactly what it looks like. We know exactly what incredibly devastating American foreign policy decisions look like because Gaza started under Biden. And we saw how the media packaged it, and we saw how the Democratic Party responded to the demands, the reasonable calls of restraint, the reasonable calls for a ceasefire. The Democrats set the stage for even the censorship regime that the Trump administration is now taking advantage of. The Democrats started that. A lot of people act as though this censorship regime around Israel and speaking out against Israel started under the Trump administration. No, the Trump administration moved it to its logical conclusion, or is moving it to its logical conclusion. 3,500 peaceful student protesters were arrested under the Biden leadership for the crime of speaking out against Biden's unconditional loyalty to Israel and the continuation of this live-streamed child holocaust. Kamala Harris never came out against any of that, even though it was clear during the election year is when they did this, by the way. That's what makes it even crazier, because like that's the one time where you have the most impact, supposedly, as a citizen. There were 1 billion different polls that showed how overwhelmingly unpopular America's misdealings with Israel were, and they all fell on deaf ears. That is what actually triggers me the no end when I hear from dumb lib shits that turn around and try to talk about how Kamala would be different. And maybe Kamala Harris might come out at some point and demonstrate a fraction of political courage when it's far too late, when it's far too safe for her to do so. And then those dumb lib shits, instead of going, I think maybe this is just optics, they will turn around and act as though she was there the entire way. So if you're one of these liberals who also had this attitude, I'm urging you to self-reflect. I'm urging you to reconsider your stances. Do not let yourself be duped. These are the moments where it matters. If Kamala Harris cared, if she truly cared, she would be out there. I don't think it's fair to mimic the right's talking points on Kamala. She would be better. It was binary last year. It was binary to say. It wasn't. It's disingenuous. That's your nihilistic take per usual. Fine, but you're so mad about it both ways. I don't think so. I think Gaza would be different marginally, but not the same. Don't be ridiculous. Be real, dude. You'd shit all over anything. Don't be disingenuous. Wow, here's a lip shit right here. Can you explain to me why Kamala Harris has not made a single statement about the Gaza genocide that has continued under the Trump administration, even as a partisan perspective? And instead, the only time she's actually ever spoken out about anything Israel related was when Eden Alexander was returning, where she made another statement about how all the hostages should be returned, which is basically just a defense of Israel at that point. When you omit the key detail in this equation, which is like literally the ongoing continued ethnic cleansing campaign that Israel is doing with American munitions that they got under the Biden administration and continue to get under the Trump administration. What makes you think that she would be in any way, shape, or form different? What makes you think that a marginal difference would be all too consequential? Are you saying that Kamala Harris would only allow Israel to kill 50 people yesterday rather than 51? Do you think that Kamala Harris would allow...
The H3 podcast, they're up to no good once again. They're doing more of that stuff that we've seen. Keela Klein, co-host of the H3 podcast.
What is this, bro? Is this drama? How to girl boss agenda? Is there a broader point here? Because I don't really care to fucking offer any sort of attention to. You guys should watch it on your own. You guys should watch it on your own. Noah does great videos, and you should watch it on your own. I personally don't care to even entertain Ethan Klein at this point. I think every time the drama goes away, he purposely does something incredibly embarrassing with the hopes that he can maintain eyeballs. Like the attention goes away even for a little bit, and then his goal is to try and use like whatever he has. In this circumstance, he has money. He still has money. I don't think Teddy Fresh is doing all that well, but he still has like old school YouTube money and some of the Teddy Fresh money that he had in the past. So he's using the last remaining money that he has to basically create legal drama against people who are much smaller as content creators than he is, with frivolous litigation that will most likely be tossed aside by any competent judge. And it's twofold. On the one hand, he wants to do this because he wants to get a W because he just got owned by billionaire Brian Kavanaugh. On the other hand, he wants to basically create some air of attention around him, because even the slop tuber orbiters that he has cultivated at this point have been turning around and saying, this is really boring. Don't watch, move on. WWE World War III time terrorist merge? What is terrorist merge? Yeah. I believe in the copyright lawsuits that he has launched against Denims, Frogan, and Casey Tron. He mentions my name, I think 150 plus times, even calling me the Grand Mufti of Palestine that was like homies with Adolf Hitler. What the f does that have to do with copyright, man? Those with money in the legal system have the ability to destroy and bully and just defeat people on the grounds of, I have more money. This is what Ethan said when he was faced with the Matt Haas lawsuit. 258 times to be exact. Psychotic. Anyway, here is Tulsi Gabbard now trying to fix what she said, which was the initial assessment of Tulsi Gabbard and the intelligence community as the head of DNI was that Iran did not have nukes, nor were in the process of enriching uranium to develop nuclear warheads.
Iran continues to seek expansion of its influence in the Middle East, despite the degradation to its proxies and defenses during the Gaza conflict. Iran has developed and maintains ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and UAVs, including systems capable of striking U.S. targets and allies in the region. Tehran has shown a willingness to use these weapons, including during a 2020 attack on U.S. forces in Iraq and in attacks against Israel in April and October 2024. Iran's cyber operations and capabilities also present a serious threat to U.S. networks and data. The IC continues to assess that Iran is not building a nuclear weapon, and Supreme Leader Khamenei has not authorized the nuclear weapons program that he suspended in 2003. The IC continues to monitor closely if Tehran decides to reauthorize its nuclear weapons program. In the past year, we've seen an erosion of a decades-long taboo in Iran on discussing nuclear weapons in public, likely emboldening nuclear weapons advocates within Iran's decision-making apparatus. Iran's enriched uranium stockpile is at its highest levels and is unprecedented for a state without nuclear weapons. Iran will likely continue efforts to counter Israel and press for U.S. military withdrawal from the region by aiding, arming, and helping to reconstitute its loose consortium of like-minded terrorists and militant actors, which it refers to as its axis of resistance. Although weakened...
Wait, so these words, Iran is at the point that it can produce a nuclear weapon within weeks to months, appear nowhere in the testimony. Yeah, she's not even saying that. Also, as every intel analyst can tell you, having intelligence on something is not the same as assessing it. One could find info to support any number of claims. What matters is what the IC makes of that information, the intelligence community. Oh, she's saying this is her initial assessment, and then she's trying to massage the narrative by changing the description. The dishonest media is intentionally taking my testimony out of context and spreading fake news as a way to manufacture intelligence that Iran is at the point that it can produce a nuclear weapon within weeks to months if they decide to finalize the assembly. President Trump has made it clear that that can't happen, and I agree. Oh. Oh, so she just did the thing. I thought there was like I thought there was a new testimony. Hasan, just stop. Dude, you being online with your ideology is cancer for America. My ideology of anti-war so that we can use our funds better instead of giving them to Israel so they can kill children. We should build roads in your neighborhood, give you health care, make sure that your children have a better future, make sure that you can go to college and your children can go to college, make sure that we have better workplace protections for you and others like you, make sure that you can make an honest living and not have to worry about your finances every step of the way, make sure that we can fix the affordability crisis. This is my dangerous, cancerous ideology. This man says, no, we must give all of our money to Israel. We must give all of our money to endless bloodshed overseas. We must kill everyone. We must vanquish all of these people that I now believe are my foes. I can't understand how someone could be this cucked. Hasan, you're so fine. Are you stupid? Don't do this double debate. Ban me. I don't support terrorists. Iran need to go, yes. I'm not going to ban you, but you are a terrorist. You speak about a foreign nation with 92 million people in worse ways than that foreign nation even talks about you. They burned. They say death to America, right? They said death to America, death to Israel. You freak out about it. The reason why they say that is because we're already in the process of bombing them. We've already destabilized them. Iran has done nothing to you in return. And in the process, also, your name has FNAF on it, so I suspect you're a child, and I'm literally talking to a child who is just repeating a talking point that he saw from someone with a child brain, probably an adult with a childlike brain. Oh, Maya's here. I can hear myself. FNAF fans are 30 now. But in any case, have fun. Have fun being drafted. Y'all are literally brain wasted. Dude, you can't even write brainwashed. You're saying brain wasted. I think it is not I or this community that is brainwashed. You are the brainwashed one if you think that going to war with Iran is a good thing for you. Every dollar spent on weapons to kill people over there is a dollar that could be spent on you and your loved ones to improve your living conditions here. Okay? There is a finite amount of money out there, and you have been brainwashed into thinking that that money is better served killing random children overseas rather than here to improve your living standards. Americans are the most brainwashed country on the planet. You literally think we have to bomb Iran. You don't even think about like how consequential that might be for you. The reason why I'm taking the time out to talk to you directly is because I hope there are people like you in the chat who might have these, might have for the first time ever watched me and maybe have silly positions like you do that will quickly shake themselves away from this stupor. You have what I like to call serf mindset. You have the brain of a peasant, where you say, my lordship controls my life. I will fight for my lordship. My lordship must not die. I will put my body on the line for my lordship so he can eat all the tasty treats and develop goiter when I suffer and my family dies from famine. What's your favorite streamer? Stan the FNAF man? Well, what the... There's no way he got banned. I think he just like got so embarrassed that he... Or not goiter, sorry, gout. You're right. I said goiter. Popular subtle propaganda tactic of late is crediting U.S. intel that Iran has not decided to make a nuke and would be years away even if they did, to just Tulsi Gabbard. She was repeating uniform consensus of the intel community since 2007. This wasn't in dispute until 10 minutes ago. Even the New York Times makes it clear repeatedly that the White House and Israel's new conspiracy theory is not based on a shred of new evidence, but merely a new analysis of existing work, which is to say that they're just making shit up in contradiction to uniform consensus of the CIA, DNI, etc. Yeah, I think we made fun of him for FNAF too much, so he changed his username. What I'd love a reporter to ask Schumer, Jeffries, or any Dems is, do you believe the established U.S. intelligence consensus version of events, or Trump and Netanyahu's claim that Iran has both decided to build a nuke and is 15 days away from doing so? Would be very informative. Because all of these AIPAC crib statements coming out sure sound like top Democrats are buying Trump's version of events and not the U.S. intelligence communities. And since Trump is a Russian asset, this would seem ill-advised in my opinion. What? Is it actually effing? I'm confused. It's not on my end. I didn't experience anything on my end. I think that's a Twitch side issue. False flag F. Putin today says, despite the risks, we built a reactor in Bushehr and signed a contract for 2 more. We are not evacuating personnel. We raised this issue with Israel and President Trump. We act within international law and demand safety of our staff. A quiet but clear warning. Russia isn't leaving Iran, and if Israel or the U.S. puts Russian lives at risk, the consequences will escalate. Why are people saying this is a massive F? I'm so confused. I didn't experience anything. Most people did not. Why the fuck is everybody freaking out? Just refresh. I don't know if you did.
General, your take, what would you say right now if the president said, I need you in the Oval Office to talk to me about what my options are? What would you emphasize?
Yeah, well, a few things. I think, first of all, I think he's had 4 or 5 meetings on this, and we certainly don't know, where he is on all of those meetings. But I think from the policy perspective, from when you look at it, from Marco Rubio's responsibilities.
He changed his username from Stan the FNAF man to Stan the man. Ain't no way. Ain't no way. He changed his name from Stan the FNAF man to Stan the man. Oh my God. I guess he was like self-aware enough and has the capacity to feel shame. Perhaps maybe this is the start of something beautiful. Perhaps you can use this moment of self-reflection and extend it beyond simply changing your username. What up? I'm almost done. I'm about to. Maya's here.
This is a huge strategic opportunity here that we haven't had in 45 years. We're talking about removing and ending Iran as being the #1 adversary that has dominated the region in terms of instability. They've been at this for 45 years. And as you pointed out to our audience here, the history during that time frame is very significant, but their overall behavior. So as a result of diminishing this regime, taking away its nuclear capability, taking away much of its military capability, weakening it politically, isolating it for the first time, as we mentioned in the last hour. I mean, the proxies aren't helping them.
Right.
I mean,
their allies aren't helping them.
And China and Russia are not helping them. And
he said ending Iran. Like, that's his consideration, is ending Iran. Sick, perverted, bloodthirsty monster. It is wild to me that no one in mainstream media is even remotely putting up a showing against this kind of statement. Even, like, does it not shock anybody that, like, Bernie Sanders made a statement? He released it on his YouTube page. Why is Anderson Cooper not talking to Bernie Sanders? Why is Jake Tapper not talking to AOC? Why is nobody talking to Thomas Massey? Like, there are people, like MSNBC had Chris Hayes, had Ro Khanna on, but that's pretty much it. They're not even fucking bringing up the voices of reason here.
And they funded Hezbollah billions of dollars for one reason only. Yes, to do state-sponsored terrorism, and they were the best at it in the business. But number two, and the primary reason, was to defend Iran in the event of a war with Israel, and they haven't fired a shot. They lost the political will. So what that presents to us is our contribution here to end this. After all, this is Israel's.
Because like 29% of Americans aren't insane warmongers. It's just not politically or socially advantageous. That's not true. That's not true. One, with maximum charitability here, you're basically describing the byproduct of the media not serving the interests of the public and not actually showing that there is an alternative vision here. But even then, you're not correct. You're literally not correct. No, Iraq war is entirely different. We are literally sitting in the ashes of the Iraq war. Dog. Yes, I'm explaining to you what happens. I'm using the Iraq war as a warning. We are living in the aftermath, in the ashes of what happened with the Iraq war. Right now, there is 60% disapproval of engaging Iran militarily. Off yourself. This guy is not even American. You fucking idiot. You're watching you're witnessing the manufacturing of consent and refusing to reckon with that. There is already a tremendous amount of disapproval of going to war with Iran. The media is working overtime trying to change that dynamic. It's still not working. And you're in here being like, nah, everyone's a bloodthirsty monster. They might be. Terrorist dick sucker. Literally terrorist dick sucker. Off yourself, piece of shit. Can you explain to me who the bigger terrorist here is? Israel? Or any number of different groups or states that resist Israel? Israel's doing a genocide. What is a bigger cause of terror than that? Is Iran doing a genocide? No. Quick, answer quickly before you get platform banned, because I suspect that's going to happen because you said off yourself to a streamer in front of 40,000 people. Quick, give me your last words and then tell me who your favorite content creator is.